Herald Land. By yes.
Said goodbye to old Al. He paid his bills and stopped the milk, then put on his hat. He tried to say his last farewells as quickly as he could, promising that he would return, but doubted that he would. Doubted that he would. Doubted now he's marching soldiers in the rain as on to war.
So that was Harold Land by Yes, and I'm not sure. Like, I like it as a concept, like this whole idea. It's the late 60s, early 70s. There's a lot of concepts about war, and especially this is a guy going off to war, kind of his life before. Then he gets sent off to war, and then at the end it talks about how kind of after war your heart is dead, kind of the effects of war. I like that concept. I think the problem with this song is, unlike a few of the other ones where the mixes were really good, this is the first time really I hear a very, would I dare say, muddied mix by Yes, where it feels like John Anderson's too high in the mix and the rest of the band at times is very, very low. Like, it's very weird. Like, the more and more, this is probably a song I'd have to listen to a few times, but it really has a very, how do I put it? The mix is absolute off at points. I think it's more the middle section where it kind of feels muddled. But then you come in and you hear like parts of guitar really clearly, then you hear a really good bass. And I have to say, on this whole album, Bill Bruford's done amazingly. Also, I really like Tony Kaye on this, but I don't know what went wrong there. It just seems to me just the mix is off a little bit. But I still think it's a good song. Like, it's one of those I'd probably, like I said, have to listen to a few times. Some really good stuff. The vocal harmonies in this, the background singing is really good. The second verse, now he's marching soldiers in the rain as to war they rode, as a long, thin line of human mind, damnation as their load. In the mud, in coldness dark, he'd shiver out his fear. What disappointing sights he'd seen instead of the one so dear. Goes on, and then go home. He's going home to the land he loved so well. Go home, he fought for 2 years, never fell. Go home, he's going home. It's really an interesting song. Very good lyrics to it as well. But so far, I think it is kind of one of those weaker songs so far. But I can't wait to hear what comes next. Is Every Little Thing, which is a Beatles cover, which is a song I've never heard from the Beatles, so I thought, you know what, let's check it out, see how it sounds. So without further ado, here it is, Every Little Thing by Yes.
I'm walking beside her, people tell me I'm lucky. Yes, I know I'm a lucky guy. I remember the first time I was lonely without her. Can't stop thinking about her now. Every little thing she does for me, yeah. And you know that a thing she does for me. When I'm with her, I'm happy, just to know that she loves me. Yes, I know that she loves me now. There is one thing I'm sure of, I will love her forever, 'cause I know love will never die. Every little thing she does for me, yeah. And you know that a thing she does for me. She does for me, yeah. And you know the thing she does for me. When I'm with her, I'm happy, just to know that she loves me. Yes, I know that she loves me now. There is one thing I'm sure of, I will love her forever, 'cause I know love will never die. Every little thing she does for me, yeah. And you know the thing she does for me. Every little thing, every little thing, every little thing, every little thing.
So that was Every Little Thing by Yes, and wow. Interesting little song. I really like the opening. It's but it does have its flaws. Like, the more and more I listen to it, the more I hear just little mix issues. Like, it's very nitpicky, but they are there. I really like at the end how, like, the band's vocal harmonies raise and raise and raise in octaves, and it has a really unique feel to it, where it comes out and then it goes right back to that riff and ends off on that. Chris Squire's bass playing and Bill Bradford's drumming on this is fantastic. John Anderson in that, very interesting to hear on here. I really enjoy his voice, and it's something that I've come to really listen to this and hear Tony Kaye as a keyboardist and Peter Banks as a guitar player, and it's really interesting to hear them and just, man, top notch. Like, and to hear them play off one another, it's really interesting. Like, one thing I like about this, especially so far on this album, is how much Peter Banks is just driving with Chris Squire driving the sound. Him, Bruford, Squire just feel like they're driving it, and like Tony Kaye's there to just add a little bit of flair, and John Anderson the voice, and it just works. Like, the more and more I listen to it, the more I'm like, okay, this works. But anyway, on to one song that I'm actually familiar with off this album, and was one of the songs that surprisingly got me into Yes, Sweetness. So without further ado, here it is, Sweetness by Yes. So that was Sweetness. I have to say, I absolutely love Sweetness. It's a fantastic song. Just, I love John Anderson's voice. It's mellow as hell. Unlike the rest of the album, it's probably one of the ones that is kind of one of those different outliers on an album. I feel the same way about, I really love What Should Be Done off Look at Yourself by Uriah Heep, where it just completely feels like it's out of place on the album due to how heavy that album is. But Sweetness, I've always really liked this song. Mainly John Anderson's vocals on this is where I look at John Anderson and say I started to really fall in love with his voice. And it was a song like this. And it's just something so different. Like, you're used to John Anderson singing a certain way. This feels like a more popular side. I could see why they did this song on here, because if you're looking at it, you're looking for something to get radio play. I could see why Sweetness was added as the single. It's kind of one of those where maybe you have an album, but the label comes out and says, we need something for the radio. And I could see where this and Yesterday and Today would very much fit that bill, especially for that time. I love the subtleness of Chris Squire, Bill Bradford, Tony Kaye as well. I really like his intro to this song on the organ. It really fits well. Gives it a nice little feeling. And Peter Banks, just a little bit of guitar, doesn't have to be very much. But I love during it how it's like, how it goes through very mellow, but it also picks up an intensity to it. Even though it's a soft, mellow song, there's something about it that's also very intense for Yes. And it's one of my all-time favorites. It's actually, listening to it, I still think it is my favorite off of here so far. One song to go, Survival. But it's that one song where I listen to it, I'm like, it's such a beautiful song. Very much like Yesterday and Today is very beautiful as well. Which kind of also mellows out the bombasticness of Yes on this first record. It kind of gives it a different direction. But anyway, on to the last song, Survival by Yes.
Sunshine is creeping in, and Somewhere in a field a life begins. An egg too proud to rape, the beginning of a shape of things to come. Let's start the run. Life has begun. Life has begun. The mother flew too late, and life within the egg was left to fade. Not really knowing how the world outside would take it when it came. And life's the same for things we aim. Are we to blame? Don't doubt the fact there's life within you. Yesterday's endings will tomorrow life give you. All that dies for a reason, to put its strength into the season. Survival, survival. They take away and they give you life as they live. Right to it's all that we need to show. Right to love. The egg breaks, all is out. The crawling bird begins to scream and shout. Where is the parent bird? The loneliness arose and heard its name again. For lives begin, survival win, survival sin. So soon the evening comes, and with it runs the aching fear of hate. Could someone still remain who thinks he still could gain by escaping fate? It's much too late. Don't underrate, appreciate. Don't laugh the fact there's life within you. Yesterday's endings will tomorrow life give you. All that dies for a reason, to put its strength into the seasons. Survival, survival. They take away and they give you life as they live. Right to it's all that we need to give. Right to know. Survival, survival. They take away and they give life as they live. Right to know that we need to give. Right to know that we have to show. And we're all going
So that was Survival. What an interesting song to close the album. It has a very much a psychedelic feel to it, like that late 60s psychedelic English song. But it felt like a couple minutes in, like what was going on completely shifted into this more mellow, ballady a song. It's kind of, it sounds like a lot of these songs, you can tell there's something there, like songwriting wise, musicianship. You can tell that there's something there. And I think you can see it right here. Like, if a lot of these songs, like in typical Yes fashion, got extended just a little bit. I know on record space it's a little tough, but could we be talking about one of Yes's best albums? Because you could say it's probably, at least at this point from what I've heard, sounds very commercial. Even for 1969, like I think anybody that followed the band would say even in 69 you could tell that there was something there. Is that the foundation being laid is very, very strong. This song as well, like there's songs where you have like complete tempo changes throughout, and you can tell that the prog and that progressive rock element that some would say later in the year would have been King Crimson came out, and Yes seen them and said we have to step up our game if this is what we want to do, and they said the rest was history. Looking at this album, especially the song, I love how it ends with kind of that little keyboard, guitar, bass, little fills right at the end. I really enjoy that. I think it's a very interesting way to end the album. Like, it doesn't necessarily... how do I put it? It's a kind of interesting way to end an album. Because it just felt like it could have gone on longer. But maybe that's the genius of it. It leaves you wanting more and more and more of Yes. And I have to say, as a first record, it really isn't bad. It isn't. I think lyrically, it's strong. It's really good. There's a couple covers on there, which if you're looking back at 60s bands, there was a lot of covers. Some bands' first album was a covers album. And it's interesting even to see, like, this, just listening to this, is how well, even for 1960s, it sounds. Like, there's some albums you listen to and you're like, you can tell that the production's really good. Pink Floyd, especially The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, for all that can be said about that record, the production on it's really good. Like a Yes here, production's good. There's a lot of albums from that era. The production was not very good, but this one is very well done. Strengths of it, I think the songwriting, I think the musicianship, I think the rhythm section of this band is absolutely fantastic. Weaknesses, hiccups in production, songs that feel like, I don't know if the word is kind of half-baked there, like the songs are, some of them feel like they could go a little bit longer, but I know with a vinyl back then, you were kind of limited to what you could do. If I had to pick songs off of this, if I was to come up with a greatest hits album of Yes, would anything from this album be on there? For me, Sweetness would be on there. Yesterday and Today, even though it's really short, I think it's a really good song. The first two are really solid, Beyond and Before I See You. I think in the middle, Herald Land and Every Little Thing has its hiccups. Survival, like, I think the songs on here are strong. If I had to give it a grade out of 10, or out of 5, let's just do 5, grade out of 5. Should I do these? I'd probably give this record, I want to say a 3.5. Is it an album I would constantly reach for, like must have from Yes? Absolute must listen to? No. I think on this, the first half, like the first 4 songs are really, really well done. And after that, it's kind of, the second half is kind of where the album kind of loses itself a little bit, but so it's not a 5. Would I listen to 80% of this record? I'd probably give it a 3.5. I think for a debut, it's very solid. It's really good. It's not mediocre. Like, I listened to probably more than 4 songs off of it again, so that's always good. Like I said, the first half's very strong. Each one of those is, I think, a must-listen from this record. But once you get into Heraldland, Every Little Thing, Survival, after that, it's kind of like Sweetness is probably the only other song off of it I would go back to from that second half. But it's really good. So anyway, that's my thoughts and opinions. A solid 3.5. Knowing kind of where they go, I think that's fair. Like, I don't think there's still room for improvement. But yeah, the next one's gonna be Time and a Word. I've heard a couple songs from it that I actually really like, so, which are pretty much the only 2 I've heard from it. So I actually can't wait to give that one a listen. But anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think of this album, and also comment down below what your grade of it would be. Like, am I rating it way too high? Am I rating it way too low? I'd love to know. The great thing about this, going back and doing this, is my ratings might be different than yours. And anyway, but once again, I have to say thank you guys so much for watching, and if this is all one video, really thank you guys so much for watching, putting up with me for over an hour. But this is me here signing out. Peace.